Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Goldman. I am the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss. And this evening, we're going to be talking about nutrition for better sleep and how what you're eating and maybe how you're eating can affect your overall rest and recovery from the day to day. And because we're paying attention to what we're eating to help maximize our sleep, it is very important to remember, as we say every week, that it is the quality of your calories that matters. What we'll be touching on this evening is how sleep and our appetite hormones interact. We will also touch on the GLP-1s and meal timing. There are some specific considerations to take into account when taking GLP-1s. I'm also going to touch on some foods and habits that can help our sleep or alternatively hurt our sleep. And there are a couple challenges of the week that are pretty similar. And finally, as always, I leave time at the end for your questions if you have any. When we're talking about the importance of sleep, I think sometimes we tend to poo-poo the idea because we are prioritizing so much during our wakeful hours. But really, sleep is incredibly valuable for our overall health, but also for our weight management. It has been linked, shortened sleep or poor sleep has been linked to having some hormones that are associated with hunger get shifted. So ghrelin, which is an appetite stimulating hormone, makes us want to eat. That actually can increase in some people. And leptin levels can decrease potentially. There are also some studies that I would say might be a bit more strongly correlated, but show that sleep restricted people will eat significantly more the following day. And by significantly more, we're looking at around 300 additional calories. And they tend to come in the form of carb-heavy snacks. So that's why they tend to be, I would say, higher in calories, because when we're doing simple carbohydrate snacks, we tend to eat a bit more of that. And so those 300 extra calories, they can really add up very quickly and impede our weight loss progress or our weight maintenance progress. And so sleep quality can either work with or can work against those appetite regulating benefits that you can get from the GLP-1 medications. So if you aren't getting good sleep but have been taking your GLP-1 medication regularly and maybe you are seeing success, maybe it's still impeding your progress that a little more than you would want. So getting in enough sleep is a wonderful habit to establish for your weight management, but also for your overall health. So when you are taking a GLP-1 medication, there are a couple factors. Primarily, an area to consider is the fact that one of the effects of these medications is slowed gastric emptying. And what that leads to is the possibility for a higher risk of GERD or acid reflux. And there was one study where it was compared to a different type of diabetes management medication. So not directly compared to someone who's not taking a GLP-1, but even so, when compared to this other diabetes medication, the relative risk of GERD was actually 27% higher in those who were taking a GLP-1 medication. If you have already or maybe prone to experiencing reflux, then you know just how important it is to be careful about the timing of when you eat. And if you're already experiencing these issues, the GLP-1 medication most likely is compounding on that. So try to avoid eating a large or high-fat meal close to your bedtime, just because that can impact your sleep by having those reflux symptoms, overall discomfort because you're feeling very, very full, and of course, an increased risk of nausea with larger meal intake. So after going through those risks and also the importance of sleep, I think it's important that we focus on some foods and overall diets that can help support our sleep. So there are a few nutrients that are associated with overall body relaxation, getting in good sleep, and I wanted to list out some foods that were good sources of the following nutrients. So tryptophan, which most people know about, that actually helps with serotonin and as well as melatonin production in your body. Turkey is famous for the tryptophan content, and some people will debate that is it the turkey at Thanksgiving or just the size of the meal that makes us tired? But even so, tryptophan does have this association with helping with sleep. And so there are a few sources here that I list, including chicken, edamame or soy, pumpkin seeds, and cheese. Then, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there are some foods that are naturally high in melatonin itself. So our bodies produce it, but there are some foods that also have it. One is tart cherries. So I do give an example of a type of cherry that would count for that. Also, tart cherry juice, unsweetened, ideally. Eggs, pistachios, especially, those are some of the highest, and almonds. And then finally, people are told to take magnesium at night sometimes to help with relaxation, or potassium, especially if maybe you get cramps in the evening. So sweet potatoes, bananas, and avocados are all excellent sources, and there are plenty of other really good sources as well. Just be mindful, especially with avocados. Avocados are very, very healthy, but they do pack a caloric punch, and so moderation is definitely key. And when it comes to dietary patterns, again, the Mediterranean diet wins. Also, the DASH diet, which is related to reducing hypertension in people. And then when the Mediterranean and DASH diet are combined, they form something called the MIND diet. So these are all very similar here and there, but higher adherence to these types of diets was linked to better sleep quality. And one potential reason for this is that the Mediterranean diet, since we know that one, I'll touch on that specific one instead of listing all those names out. But we do know that it is very high in anti-inflammatory foods, whereas pro-inflammatory foods, which can be in some standard American diets, especially if we're eating more processed foods, fast foods, the ready-to-eat packaged items, those are actually linked to worse sleep quality. So another reason to partake in the Mediterranean diet pattern. And then some habits that can undermine your sleep. We already talked about the large meals or the late evening meals because of reflux risk, as well as, though, and I didn't touch on this, your digestive system is going to be put to work rather than allowing it to have a period of rest. And so that is another area where maybe it's a beneficial idea to put that off or to not eat right before bedtime. But a couple other habits that many of us partake in and not realize just how much it can affect our sleep. One is caffeine, especially later in the day. It's been found that caffeine intake can reduce your total sleep time by 45 minutes, which might not seem like a lot, but that's very close to cutting out 1 hour of your sleep time. And one study even found that high doses of caffeine, which is around 400 milligrams a day, and for an example, I gave that a Celsius beverage, a standard size, typically contains 200 milligrams. So if you're having 2 Celsius beverages in a day or more, be aware that that can really disrupt your sleep, even if the last time you consumed one was 12 hours before. So if you had a Celsius at 10 a.m., you may still be experiencing, or maybe 2 Celsius, excuse me, or just high caffeine intake from additional coffee or any other energy drink. That can lead to disrupted sleep 12 hours later. So 10 p.m., you may still be feeling that. Moving on to sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, alcohol. Many times people will consider this to be a sleep aid, but it really isn't. You may fall asleep faster, but you're not going to be sleeping better. It tends to reduce the time that you are in REM sleep, which is a restful, important time period of sleep overnight. And it can also worsen sleep apnea. So all those can be contributing factors to having lower quality. Even if you're not waking up in the middle of the night, the quality itself is not going to be there. So you may ask yourself at this point, what can I change today? What are some easy little tweaks? Because you may not be ready to do a complete overhaul. So consider some of your current habits. And if you're drinking caffeinated beverages, I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of drinking them rather late in the day, and I do pay the price. But try to stop before 2 or 3 p.m. Also, try to limit your processed foods and build your meals, even if they're not large meals, have whole, real foods involved. If you like to enjoy recipes and try cooking with new recipes, try out some new Mediterranean recipes that still focus on protein. And if you are a late eater and feel like you haven't been sleeping well because of that, try and give yourself that 2 to 3 hours between your last meal and bedtime. Potentially even set an alarm 2 or 3 hours before your typical bedtime, where once that goes off, you know that the kitchen is closed. With all that information in mind, I did put together a couple challenges of the week. And challenge number 1 is setting that caffeine cutoff, since I feel like that can be an issue for many of us. So pick a time around 8 hours before your bedtime where you will stop having those caffeinated drinks. And just see if that changes how your sleep is when you wake up the next morning. Did you feel like you slept better, worse? How is that shaking out for you? If you've got the caffeine situation under control, consider challenge number 2, where we're still looking at a time buffer before bedtime, but this is the 2 to 3 hour bedtime buffer where you will stop eating before bedtime. So make sure to have your dinner done at least 2 to 3 hours before your bedtime. And find out if that helped you sleep better. Did you have any resolutions in any reflux symptoms, or were you just more comfortable? I'd be very interested to know. So with all this in mind, we know that sleep and nutrition really can go hand in hand. One can help or hurt the other. And so what and when we eat can certainly impact our sleep, and how we sleep can impact what we eat. Just try and focus on a few new healthy habits to help improve both quality of your sleep and quality of your nutrition. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's about just making small, steady progress as time goes on. And with that, I will leave it open to questions, and you can look at one of my favorite animals dozing. They don't seem to have any problems with getting sleep. And feel free to hit the button at the bottom left hand of your screen. All right. Well, I hope that you think of this discussion when you tuck yourselves in bed tonight. And if you have any questions about this topic or any other nutrition-related topic, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can hopefully help you with the answer or get you in touch with me, and I will be happy to discuss it with you further. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week. Bye.